Why Burke?
Edmund Burke is a titan of the Judeo-Christian West. He's the father of conservatism. He was prominent in the British political world in the late 1700s, where he supported the American colonists, even though he served in the Parliament of King George III. That's what attracted me to him. Here was this British parliamentarian under King George III, who we hated, who supported the American colonists. And that I thought was fascinating and brave.
Mm-hmm.
He also opposed the French Revolution, which, as you may know, was the first left-wing revolution. And he was very wise and again brave to oppose the French Revolution. All these make him brave and brilliant and worth being inspired by. And oh, by the way, he said something famous, and that's the reason a lot of people know him, but that's not really what first drew me to him. The famous thing that he supposedly said is the only thing necessary for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. You've perhaps heard that. That's attributed to Burke.
Of course. Oh, wow. Okay. Why Burkean?
Well, there's obviously only one Burke,
Okay.
but there can be a lot of Burkeans, and I'm not the only Burkean. Anybody can be a Burkean. Burkeans stand on what I call the Burkean touchstones, and I'll list those for you. There's four Burkean touchstones. But before I list the four Burkean touchstones, they are really the stepping stones to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think that'll become clear in a moment. And I would argue that American exceptionalism is based on the four Burkean touchstones. So the Burkean touchstones are private property rights, order and stability, proven social structures, and liberal conservatism. So private property rights, order and stability, proven social structures, liberal conservatism. Those are the four Burkean touchstones. If you stand on those, if your political outlook is based on those, you're a Burkean. And if a country is based on those, it's a Burkean nation.
Well, I'm loving everything I'm hearing. It sounds like you're describing America.
I
It
am
really
describing
does.
America, and I'm also describing some great Americans. So, in my estimation, here are some American Burkeans. Ben Franklin was Burkean.
Hmm.
Abraham Lincoln was Burkean. William McKinley was Burkean. And McKinley, as you may know, is a favorite of President Trump's. That's worth noting. Teddy Roosevelt was Burkean. And Teddy Roosevelt's a favorite of mine, although I'm warming up to William McKinley also. Calvin Coolidge was Burkean, the great silent Cal. As you may know, the economy boomed under Calvin Coolidge.
Mm,
Dwight D. Eisenhower was Burkean. Ronald Reagan, Saint Ronnie as I call him, he was
oh,
Burkean.
nice.
And luckily for us, Donald J. Trump is a huge Burkean. He's big league Burkean, as Donald Trump himself might say. So those are some Burkeans, and America is the better off for it, and especially now.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So, why Burkean Nation?
A Burkean nation, sort of like a Burkean, is a nation that is based on the Burkean touchstones. In my view, America is the world's first Burkean nation, and just like July 4th, 1776 is the birth date of America, because we're the first Burkean nation, 1776 is also the birth of Burkean nationhood. America has pretty much always stood on the Burkean touchstones, with the exception of the Obama years and even worse, the Biden years.
Mm, mm.
So if you wonder why did America do so well for 2.5 centuries, and why did things go to hell in a handbasket over the last 4 years? It's because over the last 4 years, America got away from being a Burkean nation under Joe Biden and the 2020 Democrats. And of course, what's so exciting for us now, Delilah, is that Trump 47 is going to make America a Burkean nation again.
Love it. Love it.
So, look, I'll also point out America is the richest, strongest nation in the world for centuries now because we are the world's first Burkean nation. If we weren't a Burkean nation, we would have long since squandered the tremendous natural advantages that the God-given natural advantages that America has, two oceans, rich land, and so forth.
Mm.
But as we've all seen in our lives, no matter what you're born with, if you don't have the right principles, you'll squander it. And so America's strength and our wealth and our power over 2.5 centuries stems from the fact that we are not just a Burkean nation, but the world's first Burkean nation. And we've pretty much stood on that for our entire history. Also worth noting, Delilah, other Burkean nations followed America, starting with Mother England in the 1800s. And so Burkean nations are now rather common. I mean, you could think of the entire G20, like UK, France, Germany, Australia. They're all more or less Burkean nations. Israel, not in the G20, but another Burkean nation. But we were the first,
Mm-hmm.
we were the best, and we stood on it, and that's why we're the greatest. And speaking of nations, let me point out that very positive and exciting things are happening in Argentina, as you may be aware. Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, is effectively turning Argentina into a Burkean nation. And what do you know? The economy is turned up, and there is great hope for the Argentine people and for America to have that kind of an ally.
More about why control. How does that take us away from decon or toward? Can you talk about more?
Right. So excellent question. And I like the way you phrase that, away from decon, or which moves us to CCon, centralized control.
Oh.
Everything's about control.
Mm,
What you want in your life is control over your personal life and your family's lives.
absolutely.
And that's what I want. And that's what somebody in Dubuque, Iowa wants. And that's what somebody in the Bronx wants. And that's what somebody in Sacramento wants. We
Mhm.
all want to control our own lives. Control matters most to most people. It's not an overstatement that when we most control our own lives, we tend to be happy. And when we find that we can't control our own lives, we tend to be miserable,
Mm.
which is also why you saw in the last 4 years, as control increasingly got centralized and taken away from we the people, a lot of misery, a lot of anger, a lot of jealousy. That's what happens when you centralize control. Let me sort of summarize that.
Mm.
We, the people, control our own lives under decentralized control, or decon, that you mentioned a moment ago.
Mm.
The government and monopolies control our lives under centralized control, or CCon. You and I favor decon. America has thrived as a Burkean nation under decon. What we need to push back against is centralized control, or CCon.
And just a reminder, decon is decentralized control.
Right. You can kind of picture it, Delilah. I think of what I call the control axis. Sometimes I picture it on a football field, but let's think of a control axis almost like a slider on if you're sliding something on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
You've got CCon, centralized control, on the left,
Okay.
and decon, decentralized control, on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Where America has thrived is on the D25. If you think of it as a football field, and you've got a
Mm-hmm.
100-yard football field, got the 50-yard line in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
and you got 0 to 50 on the CCon side on the left, and you got 0 to 50 on the decon side on the right.
Mm-hmm.
America has done best at around D25, about the 25-yard line, maybe the 30-yard line, midway on the decon end of the field. So I'll give you a few ways to think about this. First of all, decon beats CCon. Decentralized control beats centralized control. And that's because decon is smart and virtuous. CCon is stupid and evil.
Ugh.
That's one thing to think about. Decon is natural. It assumes we're people, we're humans, we've got desires, we've got emotions, we've got goals. CCon is GMO economics. CCon, centralized control, assumes we're going to act like machines. We're not. We're not genetically modified to act like machines. We're humans. And I'll give you another comparison. CCon is Luciferian, as in the devil. CCon is Luciferian. Decon is godly.
Wow. Oh, that really draws the lines, and you know exactly where you are when you explain it like that, David.
Yeah,
Ah, thank you. And I like the football field also. I mean,
yeah.
D25, you know where that's way down
You
there.
know where that is,
That's
right?
light touch. I like that too.
I call the football field the Burkean gridiron. And any of the viewers, if you go to the BurkeanNation.org website, you'll see there are some posts about the Burkean gridiron. It shows it a gridiron being a football field. It shows as the gridiron, and so you can see D25 or Biden with C25, centralized control 20, which is the farthest left we've ever seen in America. And that is why America suffered under Biden.
Oh, so
We're
much.
not better off than we were 4 years ago, and that's because Biden and the Democrats, including Congress, especially, and here in California with Newsom and the supermajority the Democrats have in Sacramento,
Yeah.
they try to control everything. They try to control the cars we can drive. They try to control how much gas we put in our tanks by raising the gas tax. They try to control how we raise our children by putting the schools in between parents and their children.
Oh, yes.
That's all CCon. And
Hmm.
it doesn't work. And therefore, it makes people miserable because all of a sudden you can't afford life, or you're going, what's going on with my kids, or what are my kids being exposed to? It makes us miserable. And yet these smarty pants think they know better. They can control it all from Sacramento, or even worse, from Washington, D.C., and they can't. It doesn't scale, as we would say up in Silicon Valley. And therefore, everybody feels miserable. That's why you're not better off than you were 4 years ago. We're worse off because Biden and Newsom here in California tried to CCon everything. And like day follows night, everybody became miserable.
Absolutely. That was measurable.
Was well, and there you might have been going to touch on the pandemic, and of course they tried to CCon. They did CCon the hell. That was their biggest CCon
Oh.
opportunity ever. It's like, whoo, we got a pandemic now. We can control everything. We can
Hmm.
control standing 3 foot apart, waiting in line to go into Safeway. We can control everything, and
Mhm.
it didn't work, and it made people miserable, and it's led to a backlash, a deserved backlash.
Oh, it made people angry
Angry,
and
sure.
miserable. Yes,
You get
absolutely.
you're miserable. You're like, why am I miserable? Oh, I'm angry. I'm really angry. I'm
Mm.
really angry. People lost
Hmm.
their businesses. It was awful.
More. Tell me why Trump.
Well, the results speak for themselves, and by the results, what I mean is from his first term. The first term results were great. Employment numbers were outstanding. Personal income numbers were outstanding. I'm talking about the years 2017 to 2019 before COVID hit. We had three great years. 2017, 2018, 2019, those were great years. And I bet they were great years for you. They were great years for everybody's families.
Oh,
Those were
yes.
great years.
Yes. Yes.
Really, those were the best years of our lives. I mean, I'm an old guy, so I remember the Reagan boom, and I guess maybe the Reagan boom in the early 80s were kind of comparable. Of course, Reagan was another Burkean. So the results were terrific.
Mm,
That's why Trump,
mm,
earlier, Trump is a D25 president. I'll drill down in a second here a little more what I mean by that.
good, good.
But I would also note Ronald Reagan, St. Ronnie, was also a D25 president.
Mm,
And that's why the Trump years were morning in America again,
mm,
2017, 2018, 2019, and what we can expect 2025, 2026, 2027. So, what do I mean when I say he was the D25 president? As a Burkean, we look at what mechanisms does a political leader use, and I'll explain what I mean by that, and what results do you get. So, the mechanisms are tax policy, choice versus monopolies. And by choice, I mean, where can I go? What are my choices for insurance? What are my choices for education for my children? Do I,
mhm,
do I have choice or do I have to go with the government monopoly? So,
mm,
tax policy, choice, gateways. Who do I have to talk to get something? Do I have to talk
mm,
to a government official? Do I have to talk to somebody at the insurance company in order to get a procedure approved? Do I have to go through a gateway or don't I?
mm.
And then regulations. So tax policy, choice, gateways, and regulation. By my estimation, Trump was D25
Okay.
on tax policy. He was D20 on choice. He
Mm.
was D35 on gateways, and he was D25 on regulations.
Wow.
What were the results? We had prosperity in America. We had happiness. I mean, notwithstanding people getting upset over wacky stuff Trump would say or tweet, you strip that away, people were happy in their own lives because they had control over their own life and their family's life. They could afford to go out to dinner
Yeah.
and they could afford to fill their tank. So we had
Yes.
happiness, we had empowerment because when you have control over your own life and you have prosperity, you are empowered. And we had innovation. I mean, this is where you get innovation.
Um, yes. Yes. Yes.
So
Yes. I
back to
mean,
Trump. Why Trump? I mean,
yeah.
again, the results speak for themselves. He was a great Burkean. Look, as I said earlier, Lincoln, McKinley, Coolidge, and Reagan were all great Burkeans, but Trump's opportunity now,
Mm.
starting on January 20th, is to use his second term to become the greatest Burkean in world history.
Oh, January 20th can't come soon enough.
No, I can't. Woo!
Amen. Why America first?
America first means Americans first. It means
Oh.
you, it means me, it means our kids. America first means Americans first. Can't emphasize that enough. What do we mean by Americans? Citizens, not aliens, citizens, and now, not 50 years from now,
Mm.
not the end of the century when supposedly the seas are going to wash over us or something. No, today's Americans, citizens today, now. That's what America first means. Americans first.
Oh, I got the
And
chills.
I get the chills, Dalila. It's the greatest political movement of my lifetime. It brought you and I together. I've gone to a bunch of America First and other Trump rallies. They're incredibly diverse. You see people of
Mm.
all races and religions and colors. Doesn't matter because the only colors that matter are red, white, and blue.
Mm.
It's unifying. It's
Yes.
totally unifying.
Yes.
You and I grew up, we always saw that Latin motto on the dollar bill, E pluribus unum. America First makes that real.
Mm.
From many, one. Doesn't matter, man, woman, black, white, Asian, Jewish, Christian, whatever. From many, one. It worked internationally. what we saw in the Middle East under Trump, where he brought peace with the Abraham Accords,
Yes.
etc. People say, oh, America first, he's going to turn his back on the rest of the world. Well, no, he didn't, and he won't. So
Ah,
that's
peace
why
talk.
I'm a pragmatic guy. You mentioned at the outset, I'm an ethical pragmatist. So what matters to me is what works in practice that has the best ethical result. And man, America First hit it out of the park. So that's why America First.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, David. More for more.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yes. That's the goal. The goal for any political or economic policy, in my view, as a Burkean, has to be more for more. What you see under CCON is more for some and less for everybody else. The insiders, they get more. All the rest of us who have to pay $5.50 a gallon to fill our tank,
Hmm.
that's not more for me. That's not more for you. That's less for us. More for more. And the only way you get more is for the people in charge to loosen their grip and let businesses and individuals thrive. A healthy society is moderately decon, that's the 25-yard line, D25.
Mm-hmm.
That results in more for more prosperity for working people.
Ah,
The Trumpican Party is a working person's party, and that's partly why I was raised that way. That's how I relate. Don't try to overly engineer this from Washington or Sacramento,
mm,
because when they do that, it's more for some and less for everybody else, less for most everybody. More for more. That's got
mhm.
to be the goal. And we've done this in America. We've done this for 2.5 centuries with a few unfortunate exceptions, including the Biden presidency.
Mhm.
We've done this.
When they're trying to centralize everything, they are taking away our wealth.
Yes.
I mean, you can, through regulations, they take that away.
Yes.
Uh, they're decimating small businesses, which is really the backbone of America. And
Yes.
you're creating this huge gap. You've got the very, very wealthy at this point, and the ones that were just living paycheck to paycheck, if we're lucky. So no middle class. I mean, that is the result of
That's the
centralized
result.
government. That's the result.
That's right. I don't know if they intended that or not. I don't care, but that is the
That
result.
is the
And
result.
also, hey, look, the very wealthy, this is America. The idea is to get rich. Jeff Bezos, Elon, Steve Jobs back in the day. I don't
Agreed.
begrudge get rich. The people on the left are against people being rich. Come on, it's America. Get rich, but don't try to control us.
Exactly. Exactly. You did mention Judeo-Christian, and
Right.
I really want to dig down into that myself being Christian, walking with Christ Christian, as I put it. So please, please tell me more about that.
Well, I'll point out that I'm from the Judeo part of Judeo-Christian. I'm lucky enough to have grown up in a Christian country that I love. America would not be a Burkean nation. America would not be America were it not for the Judeo-Christian tradition and the fact that this is a Christian country. It's super important to understand that. And I'm not talking theology here. I'm not talking metaphysics. I'm talking pragmatism. This country would not be the beacon of liberty and prosperity that it is if we were not built on the Judeo-Christian tradition. We're a Christian country. So it's worth noting Edmund Burke, the great Edmund, he lived in the 1700s.
Mhm.
He was steeped in what at that point had been a millennia long Judeo-Christian tradition. And it produced his contemporaries. His contemporaries were Adam Smith, who wrote The Wealth of Nations and kind of invented capitalism, if you will,
Mm.
and John Locke. Locke actually died around the time Burke was born, but roughly the same period. And John Locke, as you're probably aware, was arguably the number one political philosopher who influenced Thomas Jefferson and the founders. Burke was steeped in the Judeo-Christian tradition. The Judeo-Christian tradition has countless virtues that have benefited America, including proven social structures. What's the third touchstone? Proven social structures. The traditional nuclear family, traditional religions, Judaism, Christianity. And that is why, generally speaking, Burkean nations, and especially Burkean Nation number one, America, came from the Judeo-Christian tradition. It'd be impossible to think of us outside the Judeo-Christian tradition and outside the fact that America is a Christian country. I'll say one more thing in case somebody's watching and go, oh, well, then you're against religions that aren't Judaism or Christian. Not true. All of us who are American patriots believe in freedom of religion, and we have no state religion in
Oh.
America. That doesn't change the fact that America came from the Judeo-Christian tradition and is largely a Christian nation. And the country, including we religious minorities, have been immeasurably benefited from that fact.
Burkean Economics.
Yeah, I'll touch on this lightly because this gets deeper, and frankly, I'm still working through some of the math. There's math involved, but won't be math involved in this podcast. The deepest part of the BurkeanNation.org website is Burkean Economics. It's actually listed there as economic control. I got a few different names for it, but Burkean Economics. It quantifies and explains why decon beats ccon, why decentralized control beats centralized control. In particular, it explains when citizens, you and me, and 300 million other citizens, when we control our own financial power, that leads to better results for us and for society at large. When each of us can use our own brains and have control over our own financial power and our families and how we're raising our children versus being robbed of that power so that we can't use our full brains because we're taxed too high or the school's getting involved with the raising of our children. I'm making progress on mathematically modeling that, and that's Burkean Economics. But I've already written a lot about it, and people can read about it at BurkeanNation.org.
Excellent. Excellent.
If
Thank
there are any modelers out there, by which I mean mathematical modelers who want to help me with the math, reach out. I'm interested in collaborating.
Excellent. You heard it. You heard him. Why California?
Because I love it. I'm an outdoor
I know.
guy. I'm a
Same.
mountain man. I'm a beach boy. I spend a lot of time hiking these mountains that are behind me right here and beach combing. I was over at Asilomar yesterday. I often run my dog either at Carmel Beach or down at Garrapatta Beach.
Mm.
You and I are so lucky to live in the most beautiful place on earth.
Oh.
Nature is my muse. I am an outdoor guy. I'm born and raised in the Northern Appalachian Mountains. Spent a lot of my boyhood in the woods. The fact that I live here in Carmel Valley with my dear wife is no accident for both of us, but I got to be outdoors, and there's no better place to be outdoors than here. Earlier this year, so far, I've done significant hiking trips to Joshua Tree National Park, to Yosemite, to Death Valley. We are so lucky, Dalila. Therefore, we have to fight for this place. And then there's Silicon Valley. I was brought here. I went to college in Rochester, New York at RIT, and I got recruited to a software company in Silicon Valley a lifetime ago. But we're so lucky to have the innovative industries we have here in California, Silicon Valley most of all, but if they can get their head out of Satan's butt, the entertainment industry down in LA. And, we used to have a great aerospace and automotive manufacturing. We've got a lot of oil in California.
Yes.
If Newsom would allow it to be pumped, California is worth fighting for. I have a deep
Agreed.
emotional attachment. I was in my mid-20s, and I realized California was kind of America's America. It was where you could go and make something of yourself, and it was beautiful, and you could work hard and make a lot of money, and you could go to these fantastic places. Let's recover that.
Yeah. Yes.
There's no place on earth like California.
Oh.